The story for Warhammer 40k Darktide seems to be at a standstill as we haven't received a new map or new dialogue in the game in a couple of months that would indicate where the story could be potentially going. But I've brought on Darktide's number one sleuth, Joe Plays Games, to talk about where the story could possibly be heading. Joe, is there any information out there regarding where the story can be going? For example, like maybe like leaks or data mining or something?
Leaks, data mining specifically, no. There was a very interesting frame, like a very small glimpse that we got in one of the Skitari announcement videos that shows like it's like so fast. I didn't even know it was there until people in my community pointed out, but they were like, "Hey, look at this like preacher looking guy that we haven't seen yet in the game that it looked like they were, working on." It's seen on one of the screens in that video. And it actually seems to coordinate with a model. And I have that
Oh,
model sitting on my desk right now. A preacher, like a Voxcast Nurgle preacher, and I believe it's one of the Siege of Rax Forge World. It's an old Forge World model. He has like a big staff that has like 3 speakers at the top of it, and so a lot of people are speculating that it would be some kind of like cultist empowerment unit, kind of similar
mm,
to the Beastman Standard Bearers of Vermintide 2, if you're familiar with them. If he's a cultist preacher, what else is coming with the cult?
yeah, for
Like,
sure.
are they going to have a successful ritual finally? Are they
Mhm.
going to have like some kind of major victory? Will these guys be coming in as reinforcements from Nox Alpha? Like,
Mm.
what exactly is up with that if we're potentially going to be getting, new preachers that will empower enemies? What else could be coming with that?
Hear me out. Whenever the vanguards get empowered, they actually just put their melee weapons down and they pick up another shield. So they have 2 shields, so they can cover their face and torso more
Oh
effectively.
God, no.
I'll stop. I'll stop. I won't
Why?
even.
Why
I
would you
won't.
say that?
I won't
Don't
put
give them
that energy.
ideas.
Oh gosh. Oh boy. We love vanguards. But so what has happened in the story so far? Why are we still engaged in the story in the first place? Like, for example, what is happening to Wolfer right now? Where is that guy?
That is an excellent question. So last we knew of what was happening with Wolfer was the Dark Communion mission that came out at the end of 2024. And that is the same mission that ends in, by all accounts, what appears to be the attempt of summoning a great unclean one by admonition. I still think that's probably what's going on there.
Yeah.
Wolfer failed admonition in terms of keeping our rejects, essentially killing us before we got there and, stopping their ritual, disrupting everything. He was in super hot water with the cult. The female voice that we hear, who's labeled as, I think, Mysterious Voice
Hmm.
throughout the mission. I still personally think that's most likely Ermal Skarkle, who we know is a big player in the cult, if not one of the 3 leaders of admonition. Wolfer is officially like at the top of her shit list and for his failure. And that's basically where he gets left off.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've heard nothing more or received no updates about him, about Roden Karnak, what they were doing with his dead body, or with Rinda Karnak, and what was happening with her being named the Herald of Admonition after they saved her life after the Orthus offensive. And we see her and Wolfer having a conversation in the narrative trailer for the Dark Communion.
Correct, yeah. So if you guys don't know what we're talking about the conclusion of the Battle for Tertium campaign, which is Darktide's kind of main focal point of the story since they did this huge kind of story revamp when they added the Battle for Tertium. But there's also another campaign called The Road to No Man's Land. Joe, why don't you talk us through The Road to No Man's Land?
So the road to no man's land takes I think it's Excise Vault in the
Yeah.
hourglass. It starts with that, and it introduces Raxamillion Dragor. He's the one who sounds like the character from Blackadder that absolutely everybody loves Dragor. They're like, give us more Dragor, we want more of him. But it introduces him, and essentially Commissar Duquesne leads most of the Road to No Man's Land missions. And it in Excise Vault, we were going to go get a new virus, and then while we're doing the cogitator stack interrogation, that like big stack that like goes from floor to ceiling in the mid-mission event room,
Mm-hmm.
full of like, you know, the skulls and everything, the computer screen skulls. They find out, they're like, oh wait, there's more intelligence here, I believe is how it goes. And they're like, oh, there's cult strongholds outside of the walls of Tertium, somewhere in the desert, or it's just like outside of the walls of Tertium, and you know, we're not exactly sure how many or how much it is.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes to, oh shit, no, actually it
Well,
starts
it's
with Rolling
Rolling Steel
Steel.
first.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they didn't change anything about Rolling Steel.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's Excise Vault. And then that leads to No Man's Land, because they're like,
Yes.
okay, we're taking that intelligence that we got that we didn't even know about beforehand, until we stumbled into it. And essentially we're going to go take the fight to them and go raid, you know,
Consor's
their,
Folly.
yeah, Consor's Folly, one of their
Mhm.
strongholds outside the walls of Tertium. That's what leads to No Man's Land. That's why we're there. And essentially we need to go, you know, clear out Consor's Folly, kick them out of there, because it's one of the places, if not the major place, that they're using as like a staging ground to get everything that they're doing into Tertium itself. So we go there, we raid it, and then while we're there in Consor's Folly clearing it out of heretics, Duquesne is like, as long as you're here, you might as well go look for intelligence. You know, we're here in one of their strongholds, so go look and see what you can find. We go into the basement. Down in the basement, those tablets that you collect, the data slates, they have a picture of a hooded figure, and Ermal Skarkel's name is on them. It's like, okay, well, none of the characters address it in a voice line. Clearly for us, that's setting up like, oh, hey, you know, Ermal's a big player. Ermal's an important character. Keep an eye out for Ermal. And then they say like, there's more admonition cults like out in the wastes outside of Tertium and stuff like that. And it kind of loosely sets up the expeditions. Although the very minor amount of story we get for expeditions has nothing to do with No Man's Land and doesn't seem to be connected to it in any way, at least the reason why we start going out there. We'll see if they eventually like converge together in some kind of meaningful capacity. But yeah, it more or less takes us to expeditions.
Yeah, and so far there has not really been, kind of like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there really hasn't been any sort of like revelation from expeditions. There hasn't really been a major story push, not in the same way that a new map like No Man's Land or the Dark Communion deliver to the players. We also haven't really seen any resolution for a lot of the other story threads and things that are kind of going on in Darktide, for example, with reusing Clandestinium Gloriana to continue to make things like Mobian Steel, you know, like what's beneath the ice, like that entire factory is now kind of heating up as it's being used more and more. Why in the world did the original laborers in that area abandon it completely and kind of just leave it behind?
So the crazy thing about that, so Smelter Complex, there's Power Matrix, which is in the same essentially hab zone as Smelter Complex. And so those two missions have not yet been put into campaign order. Those
No,
are
they
the two
haven't.
that are those are the
Mhm.
two that are missing. But the crazy thing is that after Gloriana came out, some amount of time later down the road, they did a narrative update on Smelter Complex, and they're like, cool, now that we found the formula for true Mobian Steel again, we're going to retrofit smelter complex to produce it. So I don't even know if they're actually using Gloriana.
They could have just done the one and done, and then they're like, all right,
Uh,
peace out.
I
Like, time to
I don't
go.
know. Yeah. No, but just like that whole Gloriana area is still just like super weird and mysterious. Cause like, yeah, what's under the ice? What happened there? Did it have something to do with the war that's going on now? Especially now that we know that Grendel made some kind of sacrifice a long time ago. You know, it seems like this is not his first rodeo with Atoma and whatever's happening
Right,
here.
right, yeah.
What happened to Gloriana? Did it have something to do with that? Was it something completely different? Because like very clearly something like some kind of catastrophe happened there. Not only because like obviously it's frozen over and it seems like everybody just up and abandoned it in a hurry, but the initial area where you get dropped in that mission is called like Hope's End or
Mhm.
something like that. And then it's like they have the graffiti on the walls and it's like very clear that people were just like hiding and trying to protect themselves and stuff like that. And so it's just like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if we're actually still using that facility, if we're only using Smelter Complex with the retrofit. Who knows?
Yeah, and this isn't completely an allusion to gene stealer cults, because it could really be anything. Now that we know that a great unclean one was on Atoma before, and that I believe it was
Yeah.
Saint Miss Lena herself had to banish it. Like,
Mhm.
because we know that these characters were already on Atoma, Atoma has had a massive kind of Nurgle or Chaos Cult presence in general before. And so it seems like we're diving into the past a bit more, or at least that's how I see expeditions. We're diving into, and Mortis Trials even. We're diving into the past so that we could dive into the future later on. Though diving into the future just has not happened yet in Darktide's story. We're still stuck learning about like the background or backstory narrative of the planet and this cast of characters that is somehow kind of related to or interconnected with the planet and with the hive city and everything.
Yeah. It seems that pretty much everybody has like a personal agenda. Everybody seems to be like looking for something. Like for example, Melk. There's some like psycher voice lines or something like that where it's just like, oh, you know, Sire Melk has his own agenda. He's like looking for something out here or something like that. Whether that's something specific or just in a general sense because like he's a social climber or whatever, who
Yeah.
knows? But yeah, there's that. And then like as far as the story goes, I would say honestly, we haven't gotten any really meaningful update that's led to anything or gives us any like good insight into anything for a year. Honestly, I would say
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the Bound by Duty Mortis trial memories were a lot of the Vox transmissions from Fat Shark's YouTube channel. There were several of those just like, you know, used for Mortis trial memories, which is fine. People have been asking for those to be added into the actual game for years. And then the whole road to No Man's Land. No Man's Land itself is a very cool map, but then like, you know, the story felt like it was supposed to be setting up expeditions. And then we got to expeditions and then it had nothing to do with like anything with Ermal or Admonition's presence out there other than just like they're out there with metal detectors collecting tech remnants. Why? Who knows?
Who
So yeah,
knows?
it's been like a solid year since we've gotten any like meaningful updates.
Yeah, I feel like most players see the Dark Communion as the last meaningful story update to the game, and it's because it's kind of the conclusion of the Battle for Tertium, but also it kind of gives you the implication that much more is coming, and we just haven't really seen that come to fruition. And it's been what, like a year and a half since the Dark Communion dropped, so it's definitely been a while.
Yeah, and like I know so I know I've said this before. I think you and I have even had this conversation. And I I'm really glad that you like specifically just like very directly asked Victor about this in your most recent interview with him where you were like, "Look, as far as, additions to the player roster, we got the Adeptus Arbites. They're no joke. We got Hive Scum. They're very powerful. Now we have the friggin' Skitari. Like, why are all these reinforcements necessary when it very much seems like the heretics are on the back foot? Like, we stopped their ritual. They got nothing out of it. Now we're out in the desert stealing their tech remnants that they've been trying to collect for some reason. And like Lecter Cathoris, which by the way, we do know now for sure that the mysterious cultist, the older male voice that we hear in the expeditions, that is 100% Lecter Cathoris. It was confirmed through a cosmetic. But yeah, like, we're stealing from them. He gets super upset about it. So like, what's gonna happen? Like, why do we have all these reinforcements and everything?
Yeah, and why do we need them if there's no escalation? Like,
yeah, there's no escalation in terms of like battle or anything. The cult isn't, they're not giving us the business or anything. So
yeah,
it just like it's this big black hole, just like glaring black hole, where it's just like, it's also a flashing neon sign, in my opinion. It's just like, something's gonna happen. Something is absolutely gonna happen sometime soon.
If I were Fat Shark and I were kind of like prioritizing things in the game, I feel like right now the class roster has kind of been satiated, and I would be prioritizing maps. I would be prioritizing story progression, especially for all these new players who have just gotten on board. Like, at this point, a lot of them are already caught up on a lot of the campaign stuff, like Battle for Tertium, Road to No Man's Land. They're all kind of getting into the dialogue, and they're learning about all these different factions and characters. Like, oh, whoa, Gene Stealer cults sound kind of cool. Like, oh, there have been, like, Gene Stealers on the Morningstar before, apparently. And who the heck is this Brunt character? What the heck has he got going on? Is this fucking Ogren? Okay, cool. Like, so much is going on. There's so many new players. It would be a shame if they were to be kind of like strung along in this plot that should be continuing, but just isn't, because we're not getting new campaigns, new maps, and then kind of new character revelations. It's kind of interesting to me that you have someone like Swagger basically be like our guide in expeditions, but we still don't actually know much about Swagger. He's still a very mysterious character, even though there's some background to the character where he's literally asked your character, like, oh, have I seen you on like Vostroya before? And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Why would you ask that? Like, what the heck? Like, who are you, dude? So it's an interesting place to be in the game right now.
Yeah, Swagger is super weird still, especially since, like, I think it's Hadron asks him point blank. She's like, why does Grendel even trust you? Like, why does he keep you around? And he's like, oh, don't mistake essentially Grendel's tolerance of me for an idea that he trusts me. So like, that was very strange and kind of pointed. And then, like, Swagger knows who Rannick is, even though Rannick had no idea who he was, in our first outing to Gloriana and everything like that. It's it constantly, at this point, for the last year, it very much feels like, story-wise, we're at the top of a roller coaster before the big drop down. And we're just like,
the roller coaster stopped. The roller coaster stopped. It's not that we're waiting, because we've been waiting for quite a while. The roller coaster has stopped. We're just waiting to get down. We just want the right to continue. Like, please.
Yeah. And then, like, so Fat Shark has done a really good job of essentially doing, and I always use the term fan service for this because I can't think of a better term, even though I feel like fan service it usually has a derogatory connotation, and I don't mean it in that way at all. But they've been really good at fulfilling what players have said that they want to see in Darktide. Like, for example, I
want a train map. I want to fight in the trenches.
Yeah, before the game even came out, and there's a train in, a lot of the main trailers and everything, the game hadn't even been out yet. And people were like, oh my God, can we fight on a train? Train levels are always so cool. Can we get a train level, please? And then, like 2 years later, we get our train level. And then, the other big one is like, I want to fight in the trenches. Like, it would be so cool to have, like a Krieg, trench warfare kind of map. And then
Hmm.
we get that. Oh, and then obviously the big one, because once people realized, once it was announced that they were going to be doing DLC classes, AdMech. Holy fuck, please give
Hmm.
us an AdMech player class. Please, AdMech player class. And now we have Skitarii. So Fat Shark definitely like listens to player feedback. They also, revamped the entire weapon crafting system from the ground up. A lot of people on launch said that like, I will never come back and play this game unless they completely, fix the RNG elements of the crafting system and all that kind of stuff. And they did it. At this point, I'm pretty plugged into the Darktide community. I see, in a lot of different places, the things that people are talking about, what they want to see. And the two most common things that I see are new weapons and new maps. Essentially, like we have this strong roster of characters and everything now. Give us something to do with them, please, rather
Yeah.
than play the same like 18 maps over and over again.
Yeah.
So that's really what people are asking for at this point. And there were some leaks through data mining on the weapons front that were very interesting and give me hope that every year they do quarterly, these quarterly updates, and we can usually pretty well guess what type of content is going to be in each update, because they tend to do like the similar types of content updates every quarter.
Mhm.
And so September is the one that historically has been big, like class tree overhauls and weapons.
Some new weapons, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hopeful that we'll see some of those like recent data mine weapons include a lot of things that people have been asking for a long time. So I'm hopeful that we'll see some of those put into the game come to fruition. And if that's the case, it also makes me hopeful that we might see a clutch of new enemies and at least a new map for the anniversary. Just because the other big hole in Darktide right now, as far as like anything moving forward and player request fulfillment, is new enemies, new maps. Please move the story forward. Like, please, for God's sakes,
Yeah.
move the story forward.
Yeah, for sure. They're trying to pull a Warhammer 40k narrative where the actual narrative of Warhammer 40k does not really move forward because it can't.
No.
Because they need to make sure that the pieces are in place for there to be never-ending warfare, so that they can continue to sell their products, sell minis and everything. And
Yeah.
I think that there can be this balance, though, of progressing the narrative while at the same time basically escalating the scales of the conflict, but making sure that you don't get to a point where it doesn't like make sense to just be like, hey, why haven't we called the Space Marines in yet? Like, why haven't we called Space Marines in to deal with these Death Guard Terminators and their Nurgle demons? It's like, well, okay, so maybe we don't introduce the Death Guard to Tertium, but we do introduce something like Gene Stealers, and this becomes a three-front war where we've released this update where there's this whole second Hive City, 8 new maps, new faction, here you guys go, have fun, and we're not gonna ever mix like the Gene Stealers and Chaos on screen because we don't really want to deal with that tech, but here are your new enemies and your new story, blah blah blah. Like, I think they could totally do something like that. The question is, now that you and I, Joe, know that Fat Shark didn't make Chaos Wastes alone, they made it with another studio, does Fat Shark have the manpower to roll out an update where they release like 8 maps at the same time and potentially a new faction and all those goodies? I don't know. I really don't know.
I definitely think that it's possible, just because of how little we've seen. So like No Man's Land and Expeditions visually are not horribly dissimilar, especially like once you get out of the trenches. It's all like very deserty, wastelandy kind of stuff.
Right, yeah.
And then also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Expeditions is procedurally generated. I think if I remember right, that was part of the point, was to have essentially a game mode where it was a little bit lighter on their end of work for, like, producing the map content and stuff like that for it.
I feel like it
Um,
kind of has to be because otherwise I would just be going crazy going through these expeditions over and
the
over
ex-
again.
yeah, the
But
exact same ones.
yeah, I feel like it has to be because things are almost never in the same place whenever you're doing
Yeah.
a Dead Side run. So yeah, there
Yeah.
has to be some kind of procedural generation.
And then Mortis Trials, they're taking assets from maps that already exist and then taking those elements and like turning them into a combat arena and stuff
Right.
like that.
Yep. Yep.
So the point that I'm getting at here is like we haven't seen anything meaningfully new in terms of map elements or map production since the Dark Communion. That was a year and a half ago. I imagine, and I could be wrong, but I imagine that the people who do like the map structures and everything like that are not the same people who do the class. Essentially,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I imagine that they're
Different dev
probably
teams.
not. Yeah, that they're, like different divisions and everything. That's the other thing too. It just like there's been so much, and I don't want to say nothing to make it sound like the updates that we've gotten, especially like the player classes and everything. Those haven't been meaningful, but on the front of like maps, story, enemies, stuff like that, it's been a void of
Mm-hmm.
information. So I imagine that they've been working on something for the last year and a half. So
They've just been
I
patiently waiting for Dan Abnett to revisit the studio. They're like, we actually,
he was really busy writing
yeah,
Hive.
exactly, exactly. We actually need Dan Abnett to get back in here stat. And while you wait for him, here's more Jesper Kid.
But I imagine that they've been doing something. I personally, what I'm hoping for this anniversary is something similar to what they did for the first anniversary of Darktide, which was 2 maps that were dropped within like a week or 2 of each other. So they did the first one, then 2 weeks later they did the second one. Then literally just before they left for their Christmas break, they dropped Darktide's first actual boss fight with the Orthus offensive
Yeah.
and, the penances for those and everything. And they were like, okay, here you go. Here's your boss fight. Have fun. See ya in like February or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of hopeful that we'll get that. Essentially like a small, maybe not like an 8 pack of maps or anything like that, but a small clutch of new maps and like something that like really meaningfully moves the story forward.
Yeah.
Because like yeah, it's been awful quiet. We've gotten some operations, we've gotten expeditions that definitely has like a procedurally generated element to it. We got one new Mortis Trials map that was using the Gloriana assets. So I feel like they've probably been working on something, and I'm really hopeful that we'll see that soon by year's end, because it's definitely time.
It is time. The hopium is high in all of us. But I think that is a fantastic place to conclude it, Joe. The ball is now in Fat Shark's court. Joe, do you have any last second thoughts that you might be able to add?
I'm saying demons this year, Gene Stealers for the 5-year anniversary
The 5-year.
in 2027.
Oh man.
That's where I think they'll go hard next year. We'll see if we get like Sisters of Battle or something for a class, and then Gene Stealers as the anniversary update, or maybe Gene Stealers at Skulls, just because like that would be some major hype. But I'm really hopeful for demons this year.
I feel like adding Chaos Demons would be the perfect logical step towards adding Sisters of Battles to the game, finally. Because it's like, okay, so there are now demons on the planet, get the Sisters in here. That would actually be amazing. And I think that a Sisters reveal at Skulls would go pretty freaking hard for
People would
Darktide.
explode.
They really would. But Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. Guys, if you haven't already done it, please go over to Joe Plays Games' channel. Again, she is Darktide's residential sleuth, and she deserves your subscription. She's earned it. So thank you very much for joining us. The Emperor protects.